As everyone who listens to last week's episode knows, my title favorites across the league, but certainly in the Western Conference, are the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have an all-time great net rating, second only to the 96 Bulls, who are widely regarded as the greatest team of all time, since the 73-9 Warriors could not win the big one. Offensively, they're steadily climbing. Their defense gets all the shine for good reason because they're number one in the league by a significant margin. But offensively, they're up to sixth, so borderline top five in both offense and defense. And this is all contingent on Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein being healthy for the playoffs because they've been elite when both of those guys are in the lineup. But assuming those guys are back, they just have so much lineup flexibility. They're going to be so dynamic on both ends of the court, particularly defense. I can't wait to see what Chet and Hartenstein look like as a dual rim protection threat, a la Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And yeah, there's no team in the West that has looked close to as good as them this season, which is saying something because it's a very competitive conference. But they have to be number one in the West by a pretty significant margin.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that OKC and Cleveland have somehow been on this 45 game space race so far. Like the interconference regular season rivalry, we didn't know that we needed. And Jokic just had one of the best games in the history of basketball. And so I think the MVP conversation, which I think is kind of a waste of time, is going to spice up a little bit. I mean, I know it will. Like Jokic is having probably as good a season as he's had. But I just wanted to point out how special it is that SGA is right now a plus 14.7 on off for the Thunder, considering even without Chet, like how great and deep a roster that is. They're still just infinitely better with SGA. And that number, just for a team with that many dudes, is particularly special. So shout out SGA. I also have the Thunder as, the lone team in the Western Tier 1. And after that, I've got a 3-team Tier 2. Did you break into tiers or did you just rank them straight up?
Yeah, I had tiers. But one thing I want to say about OKC, and I'm curious if you agree. I have two concerns about them, which are mild concerns, but like if they don't make the finals, I think it will be because of one of these two reasons. Obviously, when do Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein? Hartenstein should be back soon, but when does Chet Holmgren come back? And when he does, do they have enough time to cohesively gel around him with some of the new pieces they've added in a way where they can maintain the elite level they've been at all season? That's concern number one, which is a more mild concern. Concern number two is maybe they run into an issue with they don't have enough secondary shot creation. That was something that popped up in the Dallas series last year, where Shea was able to play at Luka's level, but they didn't have anyone else who could really match the rest of Dallas's offensive output. So curious to see how Jalen Williams looks in his second playoffs as like an all-star probably this year. But it's possible their defense is so elite that it won't matter. But do either of those concerns really strike a chord with you, or do you think like it's pretty hard to see them not making the finals?
So my thought with the Thunder is, as much as I love them, as clearly ahead of the pack as they've been in the West so far in the regular season, I think without Chet, like I'd have them in the same tier as the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, and the Mavs. And I'd share those concerns more strongly with you. I just want to see them with Chet. I think with Chet, I just think we've forgotten how special a player Chet is, and was significantly better in the playoffs last year than Jalen Williams. Like Chet was very clearly their second best player through the 2 rounds they played in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
So I'm just open to the idea that the J-Dub shot creation stuff that can sort of reach its limit in the highest leverage games right now. And like J-Dub, and not because J-Dub isn't going to be amazing. He's just still getting better and might not be ready to be the second best player on a championship team. I think that there's a good chance if Chet can be 90% of himself, that he can, alleviate those concerns that you have. So,
Yeah.
I don't feel like the Thunder are way ahead of everyone else as a playoff team. I'm still open to the old school idea that when we get to the playoffs, Jokic and Luka can kind of dictate pace and and hang with a much deeper roster just because they're such basketball geniuses. Um, but I want to see the Thunder with Chet before I before I put the Thunder in a tier with the other teams. I don't know. I don't know what I'm really trying to say other than we don't know what the best version of the Thunder even looks like. They played the first few games of the regular season with Chet, and they were absolutely dynamic. And I just and once Chet comes back, if Chet comes back and is able to stay healthy, they then have the two big option with Hardenstein and Chet. They can play with Chet at the five and have like four switchable athletes around him. I just think it's possible when Chet comes back, this team hits a playoff level that we can't even imagine for them right now.
Yeah. And even with all the injuries, they're dominating the regular season at a rate where anyone who's ever dominated the regular season like this has won the championship. So even without their second or third best player in Chet and some of the other injuries they've dealt with, it hasn't been an issue.
But if Chet comes back and gets hurt again, or Chet comes back and he isn't himself because it's been so long off the court, like I'm open to the idea that Jamal Murray could be better than J Dub in a playoff series just because of experience.
Yeah.
I think in a couple of years, J Dub will be a capable number two on a really, really dangerous team.